Hello and welcome to the Flick Club, the one and only film podcast in the world that you should be listening to, period. Not egomaniacal at all. I'm Karri, a Finnish digital nomad, currently in Spain, but it would not do to sit here all alone in the bar because my home internet is so bad. Hence, we also have my stupendous co-host, Inspector Henrik here. How are you, Henrik?
Yeah, can't do fucking Palmu laugh at all.
Yeah, that we have to try to master that one.
I tried to master it throughout this week, preparing for this episode, and it has seriously done a number on my throat.
There's different kind of laughs, I think he does. I was trying to kind of get the other one, this...
Yeah, that's really... I would say that's the Palmu laugh right there.
Yeah, almost. But no Palmu cigar. Henrik lives in Finland. We are both Finnish, not Iranian, not Americanized Indian, as some people have thought. Yes, this is true. Some listeners determined our origin a few thousand kilometers off, but it happens to the best of us. And for all who celebrate, Happy Independence Day or Hyvää itsenäisyyspäivää. How do you celebrate independence, Henrik?
My celebration is the typical Finnish one, where I sit alone in dark, watching The Unknown Soldier for the umpteenth time, and then go visit the graves in total silence.
You're such a good Finn. Maybe those are made only in the northern parts, outside of Kehä Kolme.
I'm starting to get the feeling that we Finns are losing kind of the sense of what really makes, or what being a Finn is all about. And I'm still trying to keep up the old traditions and old values.
But you're not religious, right?
Well, I have to confess, no. Unfortunately not. That is one of the areas where, as a Finn, I'm still lacking.
Okay, but this is kind of... Okay, that is out of the equation, but you are still rooting for Finland, of course, in different ways.
Well, naturally. Basically in everything I do. Starting from the ice hockey matches and ending with the Finnish-Russian border. A sentiment that will get us in trouble in no way.
Well, we sure like to push our borders in this podcast. Yeah, we have had a lot of, I would say, a little close calls in this podcast. I mean, I have had to be really careful what I put out here as soon as we got these international cinema episodes out because, well, everybody has their own opinions and everybody has some facts. But some facts, if you say them aloud, you just might be ending into trouble. And that's just the kind of the world we live in. When it comes to my Independence Day celebrations, I usually watch the itsenäisyyspäivän vastaanotto, the presidential gathering where the presidential couple shakes hands with everybody famous and sometimes not so famous, and then they dine with taxpayers' money. I occasionally watch also the Unknown Soldier, Tuntematon sotilas.
I must confess that I'm actually both in shock and awe that you chose this film over The Unknown Soldier for the Independence Day episode. Like, what the fuck, Karri? Seriously? Like, you had one fucking job, and that was to pick and watch The Unknown Soldier
for the umpteenth time.
For the umpteenth time.
You are the guy who refused to do Die Hard for Christmas, so this is where I'm pulling the Karri and...
It's fucking Die Hard as a Christmas episode is completely different question than watching The Unknown Soldier on the Independence Day.
Yeah, but as you know, we watch it every Independence Day. So how about a movie that has gathered the critics under the same roof in the sense that this has been voted in 2012 as the best Finnish movie of all time?
And that's only because the poll was actually performed with critics who have not seen The Unknown Soldier. Like this already smells like that there were some critics from, I don't know, Albania or Norway or Canada that were flown into Finland to watch a bunch of Finnish movies, and because they were not ethnically Finnish to begin with, they have yet to see The Unknown Soldier. So they voted for Palmu.
Well, I doubt that many foreigners have seen this tonight's movie, not least because in the DVD, as well as in the Blu-ray, you do not have English subtitles. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the best movie, voted the best movie of all time in Finland, and you cannot watch it with English subtitles.
Or you can't even find it anywhere, because the distribution of this film is extremely limited. Even inside Finland, it's kind of a bastard to find copies from these old Palmu films.
Henrik and kind of I found our copy in the library. With great effort we have now got this movie to the podcast, and I bet that nobody who listens to this has even seen it. But if you're Finnish, then there's the tiniest chance that maybe you have. Welcome to the Flick Lab, the Unknown Movies podcast.
I must confess that I'm surprised that you were able to find tonight's film from a Spanish library. Please.
Well, so Inspector Palmu, it is really sad that it hasn't gotten more exposure, because it is a really good film, especially this first film. This is the first film of a total of 4, all done in the 60s. And the character is based on novels by Mika Waltari, arguably the most famous Finnish writer out there, who is responsible for the huge-ass book called The Egyptian, or Sinuhe Egyptiläinen for us Finns, which has also been made into American film adaptation. And I can't blame you if you do not know this book, because I would still argue that it's not that famous.
Not outside Finland, of course. In Finland, it's kind of a mandatory reading to everyone at some stage of their life. But once again, once you leave the borders of Finland, I would say it's a pain in the ass to get your hands into a copy of the book.
And it always kind of struck me as sort of a contradictory that perhaps our most famous book from Finland is called The Egyptian, but that's how it is.
That's how we Finns do it.
Yeah, because you see, Mika Waltari was a big-time traveler, and he did a lot of his research on his trips, and finally he wrote The Egyptian and many others that take influence from his trips. And considering that this is the guy who wrote The Egyptian, I'm a little bit shocked that the world doesn't know probably almost anything about Inspector Palmu. But that's what we're about to correct here. And believe me, our dear listeners, if any one of you wants to see this with English subtitles, I will actually go through the slavery and do the freaking English subtitles for you if you cannot find them anywhere else. In case you, of course, legally buy this as DVD or Blu-ray from some shanty-ass town in Finland, and then just manage to put the English subtitles on it. So
that's no trick today anymore with the VLC and other modern players.
I guess not. I haven't tried that yet, But alright, Inspector Palmu's series consists of Inspector Palmu's Error, or Komisario Palmun erehdys, from 1960. The second part is Gas, Inspector Palmu, so Kaasua, Komisario Palmu.
Which, despite the name, surprisingly, in no way deals with the issue of Holocaust.
Yes, and also does not involve flatulence of any kind. So this was in 1961, and the third part is The Stars Will Tell, Inspector Palmu, from 1962, or Tähdet kertovat, Komisario Palmu. The fourth part is the least preferred by almost anyone, made many years apart from the original so-called trilogy, Vodka, Komisario Palmu, Vodka, Inspector Palmu, 1969. In this one, the writer Waltari was not involved in the script. Waltari actually walked out without talking to any of the filmmakers after the movie finished in the theater. He just went off. I'm sure it was his favorite movie.
Well, yeah, Vodka is understandably the least liked film in the Palmu series. Mika Waltari's attitude towards the film is quite understandable, but I still, myself, of course, quite like even Vodka Komisario Palmu. It's not as bad film as basically everybody is saying.
Yeah, it's been so many years since I've seen any of the sequels or any of these films, so it was great to see the Inspector Palmu's error. This first film is actually based on the second Inspector Palmu book by Mika Waltari, and there's also been a stage theater version of this same book. But what is my background with Inspector Palmu? I was in Herrala, Hollola, a small town, and family member had a VHS, which had, or many VHSs that had many absolutely fantastic movies, like the Indiana Jones movies. That's how I got in touch with Indiana Jones, watching these old VHS tapes in a little cabin in the middle of nowhere. And then there was Komisario Palmu and something else. I was around maybe 10 or 12, and at the time, of course, you can imagine, this made quite an impression on me. And it has some horror elements to it, and it was forever engraved in my memory as one of the great ones. And surprisingly, it holds up today when I see it now. It was actually a good movie. What's your background with Komisario Palmu?
I too was somewhere around, would I've been 7 or 8, when my parents just, decided to drag my ass in front of TV and watch this film. I myself hadn't even heard of Komisario Palmu at that point, but it was once again one of those times when they deemed knowing Komisario Palmu as a common knowledge, which you kind of should have, and a character you should know. So, well, in Finland, the Finnish broadcasting station Yle likes to rerun the movies every now and then, and it was just, one of those times in the broadcasting schedule when they went on and showed all the Palmu movies within a month, like one movie each week, kind of a deal. But yeah, I got into Komisario Palmu through my parents.
Once again, so was your father kind of forcing you to watch all the great classics, like he forced you to watch Rear Window because it's an eternal classic, Henrik, and now you have to watch it, and same thing here?
Exactly the same thing. Just like, how it's with me, and even with horror genre, which also completely started with my parents coming to me as a kid and saying, like, get your ass into the living room and watch this film. They are playing The Creature from the Black Lagoon on TV. You should definitely watch this one. And that was my first entry into the creature features. Also, with my parents, I have to say that Yle is also something to which I owe a huge debt for my interest in film, and basically the common knowledge I have with different types of cinema. Because when it comes to the old horror movies, which is how I got into that genre, when it comes to Palmu, when it comes to The Unknown Soldier, when it comes to most of these classics that have some way defined my entry point into movies, it's most often been that Yle has had a rerun of some film, and then my parents have picked that up and made the case that this is such of an important film that you should most definitely see this one.
Would you say that your parents are film buffs?
I would not say that they are film buffs.
Okay.
In any way, but in their youth, they actually watched a lot of movies. They happened to watch a lot of classics, and they did watch films from quite a lot of different genres. Like when they got older, they kind of formed their interest around one genre. For example, my father is a huge fan of old westerns and prefers to watch those, and occasionally watch James Bond movies or spy thrillers or something like that. But I would say that today he's foremost a Western film buff. And my mother, on the other hand, today mostly prefers dramas. But, back in their youth, they did go and watch The Exorcist. And they did know all these old creature features. They did know all the old sci-fi classics. So I don't know what happened during the years, why they, for example, walked away from the horror genre.
Horror is an interesting genre. Even I did take a few years break after I finished the Kauhujen yö events for a while, because I came into this kind of a place in my life where I thought that there's something wrong here. Why am I watching people being butchered? And somehow I lost this connection with this. Like, I felt a little bit sick to my stomach with that. And, well, I've never been like much of a splatter type of guy, but I love the psychological horror more than any horror subgenre. That's just a side tangent. But yeah, I really already like your parents. And Creature from the Black Lagoon is a great freaking movie. I wish we can talk about that at some point.
We should definitely cover it in some of the future episodes.
Excellent. So this is a very well acted movie for such an old movie, should I say. I mean, during those times, it was not so obvious that you would get this type of performances from your actors. There's a lot of this like theatrical overperformance, but it never actually is as distracting as it sometimes is in these old films. That's what I felt.
I'm kind of on the other side of the argument here, because in my opinion, in many cases, back on these days, when, for example, these Palmus were made, the Finnish acting was, and Finnish filmmaking in general, it stood on a certain type of ground. Like, there was this kind of this seal of a quality in the way how we made films. And that's something that I feel we have kind of lost as the time has progressed.
In good or bad?
I would say in bad.
Uh-huh.
I'm not saying I hate modern Finnish cinema, and I'm not saying that our history or these old Finnish movies are all timeless classics. In fact, I would make the case that the history of Finnish cinema on its entirety is actually it's extremely complicated, and there's a lot of mistakes and missteps that we have taken in our film production and how we approach film and what type of films we make. We have a lot of turkeys.
Yeah,
in the past. We have a lot of franchises, long-running franchises that never should have made it past the first film. I'm looking at you, Pekka and Pätkä.
Oh.
Yeah, it's fucking abysmal films, in my opinion. The only shining light being, and this is only on basis on how absurd it is today, but Pekka and Pätkä as Negroes.
Yeah.
Yep, that did happen. That is something that exists, even though we try to deny it.
Can we think of it as a racist or just something that they did at their time, which is not really racist, or do you see it as racist?
I'm two-folded.
Okay.
On the question. It's kind of how you approach the issue of racism. The film itself obviously is racist. Like, you can't escape that. It has the blackface, it has basically all the racist stereotypes that you could have spun on that time. So as a film, as a thing that exists, you can't deny it, and you can't deny the fact that through that way it is racist. At the same time, there is also the question, do you count in the factor that in order something to be really be racist, you would have the maleficent intent behind your actions, that you made something knowingly hurtful way in order to hurt someone emotionally because you really wanted to do that. And if we take that approach, I would say that Pekka and Pätkä as Negroes does not have that malicious intent behind it.
Yeah, just to get us blacklisted from all the major distributors of podcasts, I would say that if you paint somebody white as black, I do not see the racism in that in itself. But if the intention is malevolent in any way, then of course. But if not, if you are trying to masquerade, then that's a different kind of purpose. Of course, that doesn't really work. But if you're kind of making a comedy, yeah, there is that fine line kind of. If you think that the character is, let's say, a little stupid and thinks that he can get past some kind of, let's say, security by painting himself black to impersonate somebody black, well, I don't find that funny, but it's understandable why a stupid character would do that. So, wow, there's a lot of layers to that. Anyway, Inspector Palmu. Matti Kassila is the director. He is known for many Finnish movies that are well respected. Some that we could raise up in this podcast. There's of course the entire Inspector Palmu series, and then the Radio Burglary or Radio tekee murron from 1951. There's Scarlet Week, Sininen viikko from 1954. There is Harvest Month, Elokuu, 1956. And perhaps the one that jumped as the most interesting of the bunch to me outside of Palmu is the Scarlet Dove, Tulipunainen kyyhkynen, 1961. It's a film noir influenced film. It was entered in the 11th Berlin Film Festival and modeled perhaps after Fritz Lang's The Woman in the Window. I've yet to see this film, but I will definitely try to collect it from my Spanish library at some point. Then there is Goodbye Mr. President, 1987, crime thriller, kind of self-explanatory. A guy tries to kill the president. Jäähyväiset presidentille. Then there is Natalia from 1979. I don't know if I should laugh or not, and I don't know if this is racist or not. I haven't seen it, but the synopsis kind of catched my interest. It's a movie about a Russian cow, yes, a cow, that crosses to the Finnish side, and its attempted return to the USSR. Matti Kassila's last movie was Play It All, or Kaikki pelissä from 1994. Dude is born in 1924 in Keuruu, Finland. He's still alive, and he's one of only two people who look to be still alive from the original Inspector Palmu's Error movie. And Inspector Palmu's Error is respected by critics and the public alike. Matti Kassila has been giving many Jussi prizes over the years, mainly in the 50s and the 60s. And Jussi is kind of the prize that is the equivalent of a Finnish Oscar. Anything to add here, or should we start going through the movie?
I can see that you are trying to change the subject from the issue of racism here. Doing it as smooth as fuck here currently. Like this is how you change the subject when doing podcasts.
Do you want to bring us even more trouble in this podcast?
Well, to give you some leeway on the issue, I can promise that I won't be denying Holocaust here in this episode. I will episode.
And so Karri will be a complete question mark again in the editing booth. Unable to make decisions and where to draw the line.
Yeah,
we're constantly on the line.
Yeah, you either cut that or we will be cut off from the podosphere forever.
At the moment that we are recording this, In the Name of Vimeo episode is our most successful episode by far right now. The post itself has been seen by over 35,000 people, and it has been listened to about 520 times at this point. Maybe not to the end, but it has been listened or downloaded that many times, according to the statistics. So, definitely being current and being slightly on the controversial edge, kind of dancing on the line, certainly has an effect on the download numbers.
I would say that something that might count a lot in those download numbers is the fact that we chose a film that is, like you said, which is kind of a political and which is topical on these socially aware times we are now living.
I think we have really struck the gold here. If you're up to it, we can do even more of these international episodes, but to be perfectly honest, these require a lot of work, so we have to be careful not to drive ourselves crazy in this podcast. Well, Henrik, this is one of those episodes once again. No, this was not an easy movie to analyze. Honestly, the plot is, I think, so integrally, so closely tied to the book version that it really is as deep as the book. And there's, honestly, shit tons of layers in this plot. And shockingly, even though I went through every tiny bit I could go through in this whole, detective story, I was shocked to find that I did not find any, errors. It all matches up when you put it in a timeline. I am utterly shocked. This is very, very, very well thought out through.
Yeah, that's Mika Waltari for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the dude really could plot his timelines. When it comes to the crime itself, I would say not so much. Like, one of the key elements which leads Palmu on the chase and highlights to him that what has happened is in fact murder, I think really does not hold water, so to speak.
I'm having a deja vu to some episode here. Yes, Rear Window. You were having kind of similar attitude towards those. The ideas that the neighbors were having, and they were calling murder from the day one.
Yeah, and in here my attitude ties completely around the question of the light switch, which is a huge plot point in this film.
I think it's more of a humoristic plot point. It's brought out throughout the movie just to get some laughs.
It still is a major plot point. Like, that is the moment. The light switch is something that makes it obvious to Palmu that murder has happened, despite the fact that everyone else tells him that it was an accident.
Yeah, but what a dumb decision. Like, why would you switch off the lights if you're trying to make it look like an accident? That I don't understand.
Precisely, and also the whole light switch question ties around those formed habits that in this case the character Butler has. And I would make the argument that that's not how it should go. We can get into this matter more tightly on the scene by scene.
I have two propositions for you. We could go through the movie first, like as is, or we can go through the movie in like a timeline fashion, in the way that all the events occur in the actual timeline. What do you reckon?
Interesting proposition, I must admit. And I guess something that would not harm us too much, seeing how most likely none of our listeners will ever get a chance to see this film. So why not? Let's try the timeline one.
Okay. The people in the house, for the most of the movie, and the characters that we are concerned with here, are the old lady Amalia Ryksek. This is the aunt of Bruno Ryksek, and the sister of CEO Ryksek. Following still?
Bruno being the actual murder victim here on this film. The
Yes.
one whose death kicks off the entire investigation.
Mrs. Alli Ryksek is the spouse of Bruno Ryksek. Then there is the clerk, Mrs. Airi Rykämö, which is the cousin of Bruno Ryksek.
Yeah, don't forget that Alli and Bruno are in middle of a divorce. But they have already divorced, but it has not been legally confirmed yet at the time of this movie, because that's also one of the big plot points later on in this film. The divorce and the stage at which the divorce is currently going on.
And really from the beginning it is clear that Mrs. Ryksek is not wholly concerned about this drowning incident. Then there is university student Mr. Aimo Rykämö, cousin of Bruno Ryksek as well. So Mr. and Mrs. And then there is engineer Erik Vaara, representative of CEO Ryksek. CEO himself just stays on his CEO seat in his office elsewhere. He is disabled. Then there is butler, or Mr. Veijonen, who serves Mr. Bruno Ryksek. Then there is K.V. Laihonen, the book writer. And then there is his romantic interest, Miss Irma Vanne, the daughter of President and CEO Mr. Vanne, if I get that correct, but I have no clue who is CEO Mr. Vanne, or have I lost my brain cells at this moment in this podcast. That's all, but you can of course count the detectives or the inspectors, or how should we call them, as well. There is Frans J. Palmu, there's Toivo Virta, and there is Väinö Kokki. And that should complete our people in the house. Well, I believe almost the first thing that happens is when Mrs. Vanne goes to steal the script of K.V. Laihonen after they have earlier supposedly in the same day, decided with Mr. Ryksek that they will play this treasure hunt where somebody needs to steal something, and the one that does that the most, or at least whose crime is the most terrifying in this crime treasure hunt, will win the game. And that supposedly happens on Friday. So, in my understanding, then there is Saturday. On Saturday, Airi Rykämö, again the cousin of Bruno Ryksek, dines with Bruno Ryksek, where Airi Rykämö realizes that Bruno Ryksek has signed the bills of Aimo Rykämö only for the purpose, at least at this point, to control Airi Rykämö. And Bruno Ryksek says that Aimo Rykämö has signed with the name of Bruno Ryksek some 10 bills, having the combined tune of 120,000 Finnish marks. I have no idea how much that is in current value, but let's continue. Aimo Rykämö confirms he signed the bills himself since he was unable to get in touch with Bruno Ryksek. Bruno Ryksek uses this to lure Airi Rykämö to spend time with him to create a faked, naked picture of her.
How scandalous.
Indeed.
A lewd photograph. This is still one of those times when simply having a naked picture or even possessing a nude picture would be really big news.
Yes. Now we have genitalia pictures of half the celebrities out there, so no biggie.
Yep.
Then we change the day to Sunday, as far as my understanding goes in this podcast. Bruno Ryksek is waiting for his friends to arrive on Sunday at 21 o'clock or 9 p.m. to his house to discuss their successes or lack of success in the game. Bruno Ryksek has painted his face to play Mr. Death, apparently. And now we can count the crimes of this treasure hunt game. Aimo Rykämö has stolen the cat of Amalia Ryksek. Airi Rykämö has stolen bills of exchange that Bruno Ryksek has approved. And to get to these, Bruno Ryksek claims that Airi Rykämö played a promiscuous game. The bills of exchange involve Aimo Rykämö's game debts. Bruno Ryksek's crime was to fake the face of Airi Rykämö on the fake picture of her naked in the bathtub room, and poisoning the cat owned by Amalia Ryksek. You listeners are still following this shit. And then, somewhere down the line during this evening, Bruno takes away the script from Mrs. Vanne, the script of K.V. Laihonen. Amalia Ryksek, the owner of the cat, then arrives in the middle of this meeting and informs Bruno Ryksek that tomorrow he will pay for this cat killing and everything else. Mrs. Vanne claims that she leaves as the last person from the house, but apparently she never leaves. Around 11, Airi Rykämö arrives through the back door with the key provided by Bruno in the earlier day. When she leaves in the morning, she has a document from Bruno Ryksek which will free Aimo Rykämö from any debt claims. And Airi Rykämö stays the whole night in the guest room. She lies that she left the same night to not give the wrong impression to writer Laihonen about herself. She stayed there whole night because she could not get to the script that Bruno Ryyksek had taken away from her, which she tried to return to KV Laihonen. And that kind of completes Sunday evening. And in fact, in this movie I found that it's really hard to follow exactly what day they are sometimes talking about. And there is so much information in this movie that on the first watching of this film I couldn't exactly put it together. But then I rewatched it, paused like 520 times, and now I'm on the map what is happening in this film. What about you? Do you have bigger brain power than me?
I couldn't say bigger brain power since I have seen this movie quite some times.
Okay.
Already before, doing this episode. Granted, they were years ago, the last time I saw this film. Not now counting in this latest time, couple of days ago for this episode. But yeah, I'm familiar with the story. And in that sense, it could be that even though it has been years, I still can follow the plotline more clearly because of these repeated exposures to the film.
And everybody is a suspect at some point. In a classic detective way story, of course. But there's a lot of subplots going around and suggestions to lead you the wrong way. Are these type of stories called a closed room mystery? Is this a term that is widely used?
I would say this one is a closed room mystery, even though the element of the closed room is never really played that much here in this film. Yeah, the first murder does happen in a closed room. That is one of the key elements why everybody is so quick to point it out as an accident instead of murder. But then again, it's like 20 minutes into the case when Palmu already has confirmed it to himself that it was in fact a murder and not an accident, and has already figured out how the closed room element has been actually done. So when it comes to the mystery of the closed room as a space, Palmu solves it right away, like in minutes. Palmu sees the lock and almost immediately knows how the room has been closed after exiting the room.
Do you find it silly?
No. I mean, it is something that is extremely easy to do. There is nothing fantastical on the solution, how the room was closed. In fact, it's so logical and so simple that I would already count it in as a cliché.
Yeah, at this point, like 70 years later.
Yep, of course, yeah, we have an advantage here, because times have passed, and there has been a shit ton more murder mysteries to which we have had the opportunity to sink our teeth into. And this way, yeah, we are more familiar with all the methods you can fake a murder as an accident.
Yeah, I guess the more the accident is based on real events, the more possibility there is for you to engage the crowd, because it might actually be something fresh, something that you can actually buy because it actually happened. We completed Friday, Saturday and the Sunday evening. And this should be, in my understanding, the Monday morning now, the following morning, and the death. So here we go. Mrs. Vanne slips a letter under KV Laihonen's door with instructions on how to arrive to the Ryyksek property so he can get his script back. What a horrible woman, this Miss Vanne. I wonder how they are even spending time together after this debacle.
How come?
Well, Mrs. Vanne steals the script of KV Laihonen, and then he's supposed to be romantically interested in this little thief.
Yeah, well, that's how it went down back in those chauvinistic old days. the exact same way, this was also something that I noticed now watching this film 2018, is the way how Miss Vanne gets inside Laihonen's study. or his apartment, is that she fakes fainting, and Laihonen carries her inside his apartment.
This Keivi Laihonen, this character is I get this very feminine vibe from him.
I didn't get a feminine vibe. I did get a vibe of him basically trying to live up as an intellectual and upholding these old chivalric values, which really play to his downfall when it comes to the whole stealing his script. Like today, if you would come around a fainting woman, you sure as fuck wouldn't actually make the so-so suicide of carrying her inside your apartment. Like, no way in hell. I would quickly enter my apartment, close the door, and just, leave the woman right there. And count my blessings that no one actually managed to see the situation, because, oh my fucking god, if there would not be some explaining to do immediately after that. Maybe after the fact that I've already safely inside closed doors, I might call an ambulance. Even though that could also lead, more questions from the officials, and once again the situation would look extremely bad for me.
I see where you are coming from.
Yep. It's self-preservation. It's the theme of 2018.
It happens to people who have grown up around Helsinki, right? Not caring about your neighbor is the theme.
Well, sure as fuck not carrying your neighbor inside your apartment. Like, can you just imagine the police investigations going on right after that one?
I can see Mrs. Vanne claiming in 2018 that she has been horribly raped by this person. So early in the morning, when Bruno Ryksäck is sleeping, there's Engineer Vaara who sneaks into Bruno Ryksäck's room and steals a key from his pocket. Supposedly, when he is sleeping, he opens his table drawer, rips off the page with the naked faked image of Airi Rykämö that he was shown by Bruno Ryksäck the previous night, and at some point accidentally breaks Bruno Ryksäck's camera. But the breaking of camera had to happen when Bruno Ryksäck had already gone to the bathtub, because I do not buy that he would return the key, break the camera, Bruno Ryksäck would not wake up, so this should have been a second visit to his office/bedroom.
Wasn't breaking the camera intentional? Like, it was revenge from Erik Vaara for the picture.
That is possible, but even then, Bruno would wake up to that cling, for sure. So I'm taking that he pays another visit to the room when he is taking his bathtub moment. But who knows at the end. Anyway, at 9:35, Amalia Ryksäck and Mrs. Ryksäck arrive together to the property. Amalia Ryksäck requests butler right away to wake up Bruno Ryksäck. And normally Bruno Ryksäck apparently would get up every day 10 minutes later at 9:45. Butler argues against this decision to wake his master 10 minutes earlier, but then he anyway proceeds to wake him up. Butler says that Bruno Ryksäck called from his room 20 minutes after getting up. That would then set that event at around 9:55. Butler then proceeded to go deliver him the breakfast tray. And Amalia Ryksäck and Mrs. Ryksäck then proceed to the parlor, or the hall. Mrs. Ryksäck approves this information, but it is only partially true, as we find out later on in the film, because Mrs. Ryksäck knew that Amalia Ryksäck had been away for some time from the parlor, and then Mrs. Ryksäck, realized that Amalia Ryksäck, had killed Bruno Ryksäck. And to knock Bruno Ryksäck unconscious, she uses a wooden head of her umbrella. Bruno Ryksäck either falls into his bathtub or is already in the bathtub when he's knocked out. That is left unclear, in my opinion.
Yeah, knocking off Bruno is kind of an interesting moment if you look at the scene more closely, because Bruno himself is still in his pyjamas when he's lying at the bottom of the pool, which kind of makes it clear that Bruno has been outside of the pool during the time of his murder or when he was beaten to death.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, unless he's very lazy and just puts on his pajamas when he goes to bathtub.
Which we actually do see him do.
Oh, yeah.
In that one scene where Butler is recapping some of the previous parties that Bruno used to have. But seriously, who the fuck goes into a swimming pool in his pyjamas? Like, I mean, knowing what kind of a pain in the ass and how costly it is to disinfect a goddamn swimming pool, that's something you most definitely do not do. You do not go into a swimming pool in your pyjamas.
Anyway, he's knocked out. So before 10 o'clock, Bruno Ryksek has been murdered. And 9:45, Engineer Vara arrives, I guess again, to the property to kind of fake that he wasn't there already before. I'm not exactly sure, but he does arrive at 9:45 as well, at least. And Butler informs Engineer Vara that Bruno Ryksek has gone to take a bath and then went to the parlor as well. But this contradicts, however, when he later says that he went directly upstairs immediately to check on Bruno Ryksek. He noticed Bruno Ryksek was no longer in his room. Then he came downstairs, waited in the parlor for 10 minutes, for God knows what, but he says that he waited 10 minutes. I suppose that 10 minutes is the moment he arrived to the parlor, and then at the end of 10 minutes it's announced that Bruno Ryksek has died. Well, anyway, him arriving there at that particular time, that would then mean that if after those 10 minutes Engineer Vara was invited by Butler to help him with the door, to get through the door, that would then place his arrival to the parlor to around, let's say 10:05 or 10:10, around that ballpark. Because between 10:15 and 10:20, Butler asks for help to kick the door down. Yeah, there's a shitload of things happening here. Then writer Laihonen arrives to the house sometime before 10. And around 10, Mr. Aimo Rykämö, the Hunsvotti, arrives. 10:15, Butler goes upstairs to look for his master Bruno Ryksek, since his master had still not returned from the bath. Butler then goes to the door of the bath, but noticed it was locked. And he then calls for Bruno Ryksek, but no response. Miss Vanne tries to take the script from Bruno Ryksek's office while he's in the bathtub in the morning, but Butler and Engineer Vara are walking around, so she can't get to the script. However, when passing the door of Mr. Ryksek, Mrs. Vanne can hear the breaking of the camera when she passes by the door of Bruno Ryksek's room. Mrs. Vanne passes by the bathtub room and hears a noise in the hallway as well. And this is the first indication of any kind for anyone in the house that something weird is going on. Butler gets nervous and asks Engineer Vara to join him, and also Aimo Rykämö joins in breaking the door. Engineer Vara kicks the door open, Butler switches the lights on, or doesn't, because he explains later that he doesn't switch the light on, but let's suppose he does switch the light on. And they find Bruno in the pool. Engineer Vara goes to call the ambulance right away. Butler and Aimo Rykämö try to revive Bruno Ryksek. The lights were shut and the door was locked from the outside. Ari Rykämö arrives to the scene and panics and screams. And therefore, of course, in a very nice fashion, Engineer Vara slaps her. Amalia Ryksek arrives to the scene and tells to clean up the place. Of course, this should be the first indication that Amalia Ryksek is the murderer. But no, the movie carries on. And there's so many plot points really going on that you cannot really follow. But yeah, Butler does the cleaning, according to Amalia Ryksek's asking, and Butler does the cleaning after ambulance has gone and taken Bruno Ryksek away. 10:20, Ari Rykämö indeed arrives. She rings the doorbell several times. Everybody's busy with the murder case. Engineer Vara then most likely opened the door to Ari Rykämö and informed her of the incident. Sometime after 10:20, the cokemen visit the boiler room downstairs and then they leave. Writer Laihonen and Ari Rykämö go to the boiler room. because, well, it was a convenient place to discuss. And shortly after the detectives have arrived, Engineer Vaara picks up the phone and is informed that Bruno Ryksek has died. Palmu informs everyone that they can't leave the house. In the bathtub room, Butler informs that everyone has visited the room and Butler himself has cleaned the whole room, wiping off most or all of the evidence. Great job. And he has even squeezed the soap back into form. And Butler says he did all of it out of pure instinct. Around 12 in Boiler Room, Palmu's group and Butler find the writer Laihonen and Mrs. Vanne chatting away about some crime, of course. Completely unaware of the murder, though. Mrs. Vanne says he does not want to be any more friends with Bruno Ryksek. Is she the murderer? Laihonen says a person was murdered, but Palmu did not say anyone was murdered. Is the writer the murderer? Who knows? And Miss Vanne also, on her part, raises suspicion by admitting she knows where the door she uses, that the door will lead to the bathtub room. Oh my god. Among other places, though. Mrs. Ryksek informs Palmu that he will not inherit Bruno Ryksek, at least not alone. Butler proceeds to dig the grave for Princess Adeline von Katzendorf-Kopberg, or the cat. Butler informs that Amalia Ryksek was probably expecting to start living in the house after the master of the house would have been institutionalized. Butler also tells that when somebody makes moves in the dining room, it can be felt in the pantry, as the glasses are clinging. Butler has worked previously in a hotel and was fired due to a cash deficit incident, so now he is also the suspect. Butler has set up a clock to accidentally go off when Palmu inspects Bruno Ryksek's room. So someone has now crashed the camera on the floor as they notice the camera, and there is a thread around the writer's script. Inspector Palmu finds the red book of Bruno Ryksek full of naked pictures of young women. Mrs. Vanne explains that she tied the thread around the script with a candy package thread. I think it's kind of up in the air if this candy package thread used to lock the door downstairs by Lady Ryksek.
It is kind of implied that that could be the string that was used to close the door, since Palmu goes all around looking for the piece of string used for that purpose, and that is the only string they actually find, but it's never confirmed.
Yeah.
Like, a small piece of string is something that is extremely easy to dispose of.
Exactly, Palmu is super obsessed about a piece of string or thread and the light switch, both of which are kind of left up to your imagination what happened there. Well, Palmu then gets a phone call, I believe it's Aake from the office, that informs Palmu that the hearings have to be ended in the house since nothing has come to light, in Aake's opinion anyway, who was never in the house. He thinks that there's nothing that would suggest that there would be anything else than an accident going on. And this is because the CEO of the Ryksek company has asked to shut down the investigation. And hilariously, Palmu gives a tough time for his colleagues as well, so that all the bad talk goes in the right order. Writer Mrs. Vanne and Team Palmu go to Kämppi for lunch, which is kind of random. Mrs. Vanne explains the script incident, which mostly is just a nice side story. No, it definitely contributes to the overall story, maybe in key parts as well, but most of all I'm not sure if it was so integral. Anyway, Amalia Ryksek, Engineer Vaara, Mr. and Airi Rykämä and Mrs. Ryksek then gathered to the parlor to discuss the proceedings following Bruno Ryksek's death. Amalia Ryksek has already been agreed to take control or ownership of the house. Mrs. Ryksek demanded that she should take ownership of the house, but that was not legally possible. But she can ask that simply for the reason that she is there now out to extort Amalia Ryksek to do it, because she, Mrs. Ryksek, knows that Amalia Ryksek did kill Bruno Ryksek. So Mrs. Ryksek had for now only inherited big cash and retirement payments until her death, but had the divorce already legally happened, Mrs. Ryksek would only receive retirement money, and had she then remarried, she would have lost that too. Not sure how legal that is, but I guess if that is laid out in the agreement, then I guess what can you do? But in any instance, she wouldn't have had any rights to the house unless Amalia Ryksek voluntarily would have given them away. Well, the heirs will now be the CEO Ryksek and the kins or the kinsfolk present at the house. Palmu's posse arrived to the office only to be informed that Mrs. Ryksek has now died from poison. No surprise. And then Team Palmu returns to the house. Now, Butler said Amalia Ryksek wanted Mrs. Ryksek to take the first drink when they were having their time in the house. Amalia Ryksek says she didn't ask to offer her poison. And this is one of the maybe the kind of weakest links in Amalia Ryksek's alibi. Because she asks indeed Mrs. Ryksek to take the first sip. And yeah, this is where the suspicion is going to the Amalia Ryksek's side.
Again, for this one to kind of where Amalia would have had to know, or Amalia would have had to have a precognition on what booze Mrs. Ryksek is going to drink, since alcohol consumption is something that is all over the board in this film.
It is. If you look at what Mr. Rykämö is having on the tray, there's at least 5 different drinks. How the hell did it go so that Amalia Ryksek managed to poison her with the correct drink?
Yeah, she would have needed to know that Mrs. Ryksek would prefer the absinthe, which is her choice for poison from all the booze that's been offered. And yeah, Amalia could have gone with the pre-knowledge that Mrs. Ryksek likes absinthe. But then again, Mrs. Ryksek herself makes a point that she has not had absinthe for quite some time. So yeah, there is the kind of the problem. If there has been a long time that Mrs. Ryksek has not used absinthe, even if that would be kind of her preferred alcohol, how the hell could Amalia Ryksek really count on her choosing absinthe on this situation now that absinthe is present?
Indeed. And as long as we're talking about the drinks, I am reminded that in this podcast we try to look for the drinks that are being drunk in the movie that we are going through. And in this case, well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm recording this in a bar because my Wi-Fi is so shit that I came here. And my wine is, I cannot really tell you what it is, but it's red wine. That's that much I can tell you. I was not able to find Madeira wine, which I was looking for because Amalia Ryksek prefers that. But what about you, Henrik?
Well, as a, I guess, complete surprise to everyone here, in a film that's full of booze and alcohol, I, on the other hand, am not consuming alcohol here on my end.
Oh.
Yeah. In the name of loving memory of the cat in this film, which gets poisoned through a plate of cream, I'm actually drinking cream here myself.
Really?
Yep. I was not able, despite my tries, I was not able to get my hands in any cyanide. But I am compensating that by using everyday household chemicals in my reach. So, currently, what I have on my plate, I have Formil Sensitive White Care, which is concentrated liquid detergent, and some Green Fiery, which is a washing up liquid. And why fiery? Well, because it comes with a fresh minty flavor.
Hope you won't be ingesting those in this episode.
I sure as fuck am doing my best to actually pull this one through.
So, Engineer Vara then believes that the poison was meant for Bruno Ryksek, which is kind of hilarious. Amalia Ryksek says that Bruno Ryksek's mother will inherit what Mrs. Ryksek already had inherited whilst she was alive. And Amalia Ryksek then gives even more clues that she is the criminal because she gives a false lead very strongly to keep an eye on Butler. But Palmu doesn't give a shit. he's a rebel, he goes to sauna. And then Butler disappears, for whatever reason. Actually, that's not even explained ever. He just disappears, because he thinks that evidence is pointing too much on him, and he decides to be the good citizen and run the hell out of town, or wherever he went. Well, Detective Toivo is sent by Palmu to the house again to return the backdoor key to Amalia, and also the red book to Amalia. Then I am not sure where the day even changes. I think this movie is pretty unclear about its timeline. But I believe after this, returning the key, returning the red book, giving the fucking gun to Amalia Ryksek, this is probably where the day changes, because the next shot is from Palmu's office where Palmu takes a phone call. But we will get to that. In my opinion, Tuesday begins with Amalia Ryksek being paranoid and thinking that she is followed around the city by the police. But she is in fact followed by the police because Palmu has decided to put some eyes on Amalia Ryksek, that nobody else will be killed in the following days to avoid more casualties. But the first scene of the day, as far as I can see it, is when indeed Palmu is called by CEO Ryksek, and he invites Palmu to visit his office, and he suggests that Bruno Ryksek could have had suicidal tendencies, especially here because according to CEO Ryksek, Bruno Ryksek believed that Amalia Ryksek could be very able to arrange him into an institution, therefore Bruno Ryksek killed himself. But the poison absent, according to CEO's theory, was meant also for Bruno Ryksek himself, but he was a coward and didn't drink it. This is fucking ridiculous. But this theory then is revealed to be only made up as a suggestion for Palmu to approve it to save face in the family. Nice guy. I'm surprised that the Palmu is not locking this guy up straight away, because the next thing this CEO does is he offers Palmu a position in his company if he takes this suggestion of the CEO.
Well, he does not directly offer him a position in the security. He merely makes the notion that they are planning on upgrading the security systems and getting some new heads or new managers or new supervisors in the security sector of the company, and that Palmu could be taken into notice as a possible candidate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of obvious though that he is trying to bribe Franz Palmu right there.
It is. It's extremely obvious, but he does not say it out loud. Like, you drop this investigation and I will make sure that you are hired as our new head of security. Palmu does not directly state that he's gonna be a dig around the office and steal all the cigars. He merely just goes in and grabs the box and leaves the offices.
Yeah, he's never disturbed by big characters. Like, he never feels like he should be run over by big CEOs or anyone higher in the hierarchy.
Except that he completely is being run over by his uppers. By the way, how his investigation kind of gets shut down in the middle.
Yeah, honestly, when I first watched this movie, like now recently, I thought that when Palmu was calling off the investigation the first time around in house, I thought he was doing that and indeed shouting that so that he would inform everyone that the investigation is off, so that he could be able to do some undercover investigation after that and kind of watch all the players of the house after. But that was not the case because I was not following the movie well enough. It was indeed about his superior and the CEO of Ryksek company to pull off the investigation.
Yeah, that's the kind of a problem when you are taking part in the officer sector. In this case, the police work, instead of being a private eye or some other type of freelancer, your uppers can shut down your investigations whenever seemed fit, and you just have to go with it.
Absolutely, and then it is revealed that CEO's father was mentally ill, and then Palmu makes the suggestion that these genes could have carried over in the family, and the CEO is not very fond of this accusation. Amalia Ryksek owns 1/4 of the company shares, CEO around half. Bruno Ryksek had like 1/4 as well. Mr. and Aire Rykämö had some. And after the death of Bruno Ryksek, the CEO owns now more than half, in fact. Then Palmu suggests to Engineer Vaara that Aimo Rykämö is the killer, because Bruno Ryksek had disgraced his sister. But that is just Palmu pulling a prank, and Palmu is also somehow sure that Aire Rykämö did not do promiscuous acts. I don't know how the hell he can pull that one, but he just does. And then Palmu of course discovers that he is indeed right and the naked picture is a fake picture. Engineer Vaara lies that he killed Bruno Ryksek to protect Aire Rykämö because he dearly loves Aire Rykämö. And the engineer doesn't believe either Mr. or Aire Rykämö killed anyone or would know anything about the murder. But yeah, Butler has disappeared, but Butler is soon recollected from somewhere by Palmu. Palmu, writer and Mrs. Vanne meet and discuss. Detective Toivo is sent to meet all of the people of the house, to explain the latest developments. He does so. He doesn't get to Mrs. Vanne, as she happens to be sleeping in her apartment. Detective gives Amalia Ryksek the red book and a gun, as noted earlier. Amalia Ryksek calls Mrs. Vanne over to the house to discuss the events and do some research. Then Mrs. Vanne hears the clanging of the glasses when she is in the house, indicating that Amalia Ryksek must be upstairs in the dining room. Well, Mrs. Vanne goes to the dining room and it's super dark. Horror movie time. Amalia Ryksek tries to shoot Mrs. Vanne after they have noticed each other. But Team Palmu arrives just in time, and Toivo, one of the detectives, gets a shot to the shoulder while he's trying to protect Palmu, and does so. Team Palmu arrests Amalia Ryksek, and Palmu explains at dinner with writer and Mrs. Vanne that Bruno Ryksek was the only one who knew of Amalia Ryksek's mental illness, and killing the cat meant war, and the choice of weapon for Amalia Ryksek was indeed her umbrella, with which she knocked Bruno Ryksek unconscious. And roll credits, bitches.
That pretty much sums up this movie.
Yeah, so all the spoilers in the world were right there. But if we go through the movie as a movie, like scene by scene, any special thoughts? What do you think about the cinematography?
I have been extremely surprised by the quality of cinematography in hand here. Like I said previously in this episode, back in the days, there was really some great filmmaking done in Finland, and the quality of our films, even though not always, was pretty high production-wise, and when it came to performances and camera work and all of this stuff. So there is I would say this is extremely well shot movie, and it does have some pretty stellar camera work in a way how some of the scenes play almost like in a horror movie, or there is some really magnificent close-ups on characters. There were a couple of cuts that I felt that were kind of a hammy and somewhat unintentionally funny. To give you a couple of examples, one would be when they are recapping the moment when they found Bruno Ryksek's body from the swimming pool, and Butler makes the notion how he squeezed the soap back together. And then there is that one shot where Butler, with the soap in hand, walks towards the camera so that you don't see Butler completely. The camera is focused on his right hand, which is holding the soap. And then the soap just comes, and then he walks towards the camera in a way that actually the soap that he's holding in his hands gets closer and closer and closer until it's right in your face. And you just go like, okay, yeah, well, you made that shot. The soap gets a goddamn close up. And another example that quickly comes to my mind, going through my notes here, is the death of Mrs. Ryksek when she swallows the absinthe, which has been laced with cyanide, makes the notion that it tastes like almonds. And then there's that one shot when she rises up extremely quickly, screams something, and the camera switch angles, and then she falls down.
Actually, that looks really scary in real life, because it looks like she does drop the glass and then immediately falls very close next to the glass. Like, I hope she was fine after the shooting.
Well, if you look at it extremely closely, going by frame, you actually notice that she drops the glass on a different spot where it actually finally ends up in the close-up shot of the fucking glass. Like, the glass actually teleports between the shots.
The glass teleports.
Yep.
I was just thinking of the actual actor's safety here.
Well, I was merely just thinking that the teleporting glass. Like, fuck the actors, they get paid for this shit. But yeah, there are those moments. And there are some shots where, okay, in these cases it's not a matter of the chosen camera angles, but there are a couple of hilarious moments when they speed up the film.
Really?
Yep. For no good fucking reason.
Where?
34-minute mark, when they are following the characters moving through the house as a group. There is a small speed up on the film. And later on the 35-minute mark, once again following Butler opening the doors. And there is third one that came to my eye. It is one of those shots when Palmu and his posse are actually exiting the manor and heading for the front door. And there also you can actually see that they have sped up the movie, not by much, but they do run the frames a little bit faster on those moments to cut off the running time on the scenes where characters are merely walking towards a door.
Okay, very possible. I can't say that I really noticed that, but I'm saying it didn't happen. It wasn't as noticeable as in, for example, Rear Window, which was our first episode.
Yeah, it is much more subtle here. And like I said, they are extremely short shots. So it's most definitely, it's not like in a Rear Window where you get super obvious long running shot where you can clearly see that they have sped up the film.
Yeah.
But there are those moments. Just like there are those classical jump cuts that come more prominent in the film the longer the film actually processes.
But Henrik, the most distracting thing in this film for me was when Inspector Palmu and his posse and KV Laihonen and Mrs. Vanne go to the restaurant and have a drink as well. And outside the window, you see a French flag. How do you explain the French flag?
I completely missed the French flag.
Well, it could have...
God damn it.
I think it's just some stock cardboard background that they put outside of the windows.
Yeah, now that you mention it, yeah. I completely missed the flag. I'm not sure. That could be just something that they themselves did not notice or were unable to avoid when shooting the film.
Well, definitely it looks like a cardboard background, and it most definitely is. But the question is, of course, because this is a black and white movie, is it really a French flag? But when I look at how dark the colors are, it definitely could be a French flag. And if not a French flag, it's definitely not a Finnish flag.
Most definitely not.
Yeah.
Yeah, good call, I must admit.
Yeah. I'm always looking for the flaws.
That's what we do in this podcast. We look at old-time classics
and ruin them.
Ruining them by nitpicking on completely superfluous flaws.
As mentioned earlier, this was voted in 2012 as the best best Finnish film ever made. Ever. The public broadcaster Yleisradio, or Yle for short, asked critics to choose the best Finnish film of all time, and Komisario Palmun's Error won by a large margin. For further trivia, Aku Korhonen was the first choice to play Palmu, but he was super ill at the time and the role went to Rinne, and perhaps that's for the best. Tauno Palo was thought as one of the actors that could take the helm, but he had the baggage of he had acted in so many movies and played many romantic roles that they chose Rinne, and it was a really good call. I can't imagine anyone better than Rinne for this role at the time.
This is once again one of those movies and those characters that become iconic through the actor that has been chosen to play the character.
Yeah, the stars truly aligned Komisario Palmu in this one.
Most definitely. Like you said, the story has been brought up to stages. It exists both in book and audiobook, and there are a lot of different forms of this story. And at least to me, none of those other presentations are in no way as memorable as Rinne's performance here. Like, Rinne is the face of Palmu, most definitely.
Truly is.
And you can't imagine any other actor making this role. Like, when you think about Palmu, you immediately think about Rinne.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of a situation, like, for example, the Birdie and Wooster series, which is completely tied around Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie. Or, Dr. House, a character that when you hear the name, you immediately think about Hugh Laurie. And for the character of Palmu, Rinne is definitely that kind of an actor.
There was talk of the people who are still alive. Well, it's director Matti Kassila, born in 1924. He's now 94 years old as we are recording this podcast. And then there is Elina Salo, played as Airi Rykämä, born in 1936. She is 82 years old. And unfortunately many of the actors died of really weird diseases, some different cancers of the mouth, for example, and a lot of them were drinkers and they died in their 50s and 60s, so come on, cut down that drinking. And this movie is distributed by SF.
Yep.
Yeah.
A Finnish film. Rough translation.
They filed for bankruptcy in 1965. There was a lot of financial turmoil of the Finnish cinema caused by like the 2.5 year long lasting actors strike. The trends were also changing, or so they thought anyway, because the television was a big thing around 1965. And even though SF was still not doing so bad, they decided to file for bankruptcy with the lead of TJ Särkkä, the longtime producer of SF, and at least they were still not doing so bad when they ended.
Yeah, closing Suomen filmiteollisuus is something that I still kind of struggle to comprehend even today. When you look at back the Finnish film history, Suomen filmiteollisuus was pretty much our film history, or was our film industry during that time, and they were extremely prominent, downright to a point where you could say that they were a monolithical entity.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so coming down from there and closing your doors it's downright baffling, I must confess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though it's hard to imagine that Suomen filmiteollisuus have to close their doors when you are doing three Pekka and Pätkä films within a year. I must say that you are kind of asking for trouble at that point.
Was it like the Charlie Chaplin of ours?
Unfortunately, they kind of were like Charlie Chaplin of ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, and most notably, It even comes down on how you wanna define the notion Charlie Chaplin of ours. Pekka and Pätkä as a comedy duo were our version of Charlie Chaplin, pretty much. When it comes to how prominent they were. And if you wanna separate a certain figure from the duo, Esa Pakarinen, as a person, as an actor, I would say was our Charlie Chaplin.
Would you recommend any other Finnish films? If I would have to go the easy road, I would of course recommend for everybody our kind of national treasure, The Unknown
Pekka and Pätkä as a Negroes.
Yes, absolutely. And the Unknown Soldier was in my mind, 1955 version. But that being said, I also like the 1985 revision, and I also went to the theater just recently. When it was in theaters, I went to watch the third version, Unknown Soldier, from 2017. I just happened to be in Finland at that time, and it was good. I don't know if it was necessary, but it was okay. It was okay.
But there you see, that is the reason why you most definitely, when you do an international movie podcast and it comes around the Independence Day and you are trying to choose which film to cover from Finnish film history, this is exactly the reason why it has to be The Unknown Soldier, because it is the most prominent film Finland has ever done.
Yeah.
It is the only film in our film history that has, at least to my knowledge, been remade fucking twice, and also exists as a god knows how many theater plays, and is a book, and is an audio book, and is a, well, I'm surprised that it's not a comic book yet. But I'm definitely counting on the fact that it's just a matter of time until we have a comic book adaptation of The Unknown Soldier.
Yeah, it's adapted from the novel of Väinö Linna, one of the most famous Finnish writers as well. Directed by Edwin Laine. I thoroughly recommend that if you're not going to watch Inspector Palmu's Error, then definitely watch The Unknown Soldier. And we have not rested our case. We will definitely watch The Unknown Soldier at one point as well. Maybe the next Independence Day, who knows.
To our listeners, The Unknown Soldier is most likely the only Finnish film you even can watch.
Mm-hmm.
Since now that it has been remade for the second time in 2017, it's, I would say, one of the very few films that you can actually purchase on the international movie market. Like, you can't find a copy of goddamn Error of Inspector Palmu, but I would say that you will be able to find a copy of this new remake of The Unknown Soldier, which is nothing like the first version. But, you know, when it comes to Finnish film, you are kind of stuck with what you can get your hands into.
So if you're looking for anything freaking weird, like Finnish movies, or Asian movies, or Polish movies, whatever the case is, this is not an advertisement of any kind. We will not get any money from this information, but please go to alibris.com. That is ALIBRIS.com, where you will find arguably the biggest collection of movies, possibly even bigger than Amazon, as seems to be often the case. For example, I've been looking for Another Time, Another Place, the introductory movie of Sean Connery, which I will buy from this website very soon. So, alibris.com, that's where your movies are. Not supported by Alibris.
Yeah, that sounds definitely not something that would have been supported here in this podcast monetary-wise.
And from here we get naturally to the discussion of, Henrik, why do Finnish people speak so funnily in old movies?
Well, have you seen the modern Finnish movies?
Well, yeah, but what's with the excessive use of the r and this very Swedish-sounding letter when they are talking? For example, lauloin eilen riemukseni. They speak like that.
I would say that that's a decade-shaming stereotype.
But they do, approximately. So I've always been intrigued by that. Why do they speak like that? Do they really speak like that when they're at their own homes and talking with their friends? Minä ja Airi olemme nyt lähteneet tänne kauniille kesälomalle ja minusta tuntuu, että... In that way.
A kind of a hard question to answer, or anything to give a definite answer to.
Some of it's the theater aspect, but...
That is, that I would say it's two-folded. Since, of course, in preparation for this podcast, I did go and get my PhD in phonetics. So, my expert opinion on the matter, would be that part of it is kind of the phonetical pronunciation that comes to Finns. Like, we have our own way of pronouncing words, and our language, phonetically, it's pretty rough. It's kind of a hard language.
Yeah, and it was much harder back then, but they have this really soft L, which is bothering me. Where is this coming from? Is it just to sound kind of more upper class Finn if you're using the more Swedish L and strong R letter? Rrr.
I would say that to us, the strong R, it's something that we just grow into.
But it is still a different R in this movie than what you use day to day.
I wouldn't say it's that different.
Okay, let me exemplify in this quote that I find my favorite quote in this movie. This is from Mr. Palmu. First in Finnish. Murha! Murha on kaikista rikoksista ratkaisevin ja lopullisin, sillä sitä ei voi koskaan sovittaa. Ja siksi murha on ainoa pätevä salapoliisijutun aihe. Poliisimiehen täytyy odottaa, että rikolliset tekevät rikoksensa ja sitten selvittää ne. Tästä selvittämisestä puuttuu kerta kaikkiaan romantiikka. Sinä puhut aina psykologiasta ja intuitiosta ja ties mistä, ja mielelläsi ylpeilet noilla yliopisto-opinnoillasi. Minä olen tällainen vanha, yksinkertainen poliisimies, mutta minä tiedän, että mielikuvituksella ei saa olla mitään tekemistä poliisin työssä rikoksen asiallisen selvittämisen kanssa. On vain kerättävä faktat, asetettava ne oikeisiin yhteyksiinsä ja vedettävä välttämättömät johtopäätökset. Siinä kaikki. Mutta huolellinen pitää olla, ja siksi sinun pitää kirjoittaa uudestaan tämä pöytäkirja. Siinä on sinulle vähän kirjallista askartelua.
Yeah, I actually don't find that weird. Like, I see what you are aiming at, but the R is not constantly kind of brought into these extra levels of hardness, even in your, example. For example, in your example also, there was giving this extra weight, not simply to the R, phonetically wise. But yeah, I wouldn't say that was as weird as you kind of make it sound like. In your example that you just gave, there is given this extra weight in pronunciation, both vocals and consonants. Of course, those R's, like you said, the R kind of comes through. But I would make the case that a lot of that is simply for phonetical reasons when it comes to, Finnish language and how we Finns pronounce words. We, from the get-go, we like to, or we have the hard-hitting R, which is something I'm most certain that our listeners have also picked up already, listening to this podcast and listening to our R's. And in your example, also some of the vocals, like, for example, the A was given extra weight. And that, I would say, is simply a case of that theater background, once again, where you have to give extra emphasis on some letters and some words in order to bring forth the dramatics and to highlight certain sentences.
But it cannot apply for everyone. For example, radio or TV announcers, and you see the exact same trend in the way they talk. For example, Väinö Linna oli tänään menossa kovasti Olympiastadionille, ja olemme tänään kuuntelemassa hänen puheitaan. This kind of speaking, of course, well, it was the thing that they did back then, but...
Yeah, they did that basically everywhere.
Why is it so goddamn different? Is it just the style of speaking that was back then? Of course, it has also to do with the microphones. When you hear everything through the microphones at the time, it sounds different. It sounds more broken. Different microphones, different pronunciation way of presenting yourself. And you can see this trend Europe-wide. You can see this trend then changing perhaps in the 80s or the 90s.
I would make the case that you can see the trend kind of globally.
Yeah.
Like everybody was doing that back in the day.
Yeah.
X3. Every fucking newspaper boy. Fucking ever. Exact same stunt.
It's kind of amazing. I can't even probably imitate that.
Yeah, of course not. Because, the way how we approach speech and speaking, it has changed globally throughout the years.
But would you agree with me that the way we speak Finnish language might have just changed in day-to-day talk as well, considerably?
No, I would be too afraid to make that case.
Well, we address people with the formal form less and less. There's that.
Yeah, in that sense, of course, yeah.
But,
naturally, our way of speaking has changed considerably throughout the years.
Yeah, but let's say, for argument's sake, I'll be in the 1930s marketplace for meat. I will go to the butcher. I want a piece of meat. Will I say, voisitteko leikata minulle osan tuosta lehmästä? Or would I say, hyvää päivää. Voisitteko leikata tuosta lehmästä minulle osasen, niin lähden sitten kotioni syömähän sitä. Which one would it be?
Are we now once again? Are you making trying to make the point that our pronunciation has changed, or the formality of how we speak has changed?
Both have changed. But did people talk like they talk in the movies and the radio and TV back in the day in their regular life? Because that would be really okay. That would be kind of abnormal.
I can give you it being abnormal, but not that much abnormal.
Maybe I need to talk with my grandmother. My grandmother has been a Finnish teacher, so stay tuned on this.
Yeah, this is definitely. I can already feel that this is something that you are trying to come back on some of the later episodes. We get into the goddamn Christmas episode eventually, and that is when you actually bring this up again. Like, oh, by the way, yeah, I just talked to my grandmother. She confirms.
Well, it would be another time, another place, because we will be covering, as it looks like, a Russian movie. So enjoy.
But when it comes to the old Finnish movie pronunciations, I really don't see the problem that strongly.
I don't see a problem. I'm just really fascinated by how the pronunciation has changed. This might be, like, most of the listeners may not give a flying circus about this whole thing, but for me it's absolutely fascinating. But maybe it's fascinating for you because everybody was doing it. Yeah, but I would argue that everything that has been pronounced in this movie, for example, is coming from almost a different country. Well, okay, that
yeah, and to me, it most definitely is not that strong.
Yeah, but maybe that's a little hyperbole, but it's not from this life, certainly.
I mean, if you remove the phrases and the kind of a political correctness that they have in their speech, in their sentences, I would say that most of the dialogue used in the film could still pass on as an everyday way of speaking today between older conversationalists.
But with that level of theatricalness in that, for example, Palmu saying, sinuna olisin hyvin tyytyväinen, että olen tuolla hallissa keskustelemassa noin nättien naisten kanssa. Or something like that.
And in that case, I would say that there were only a couple of emphasis on certain letters in the pronunciation, the ha at the end of it.
Well, but for our listeners, this is the translation for the quote that I'm a fan of. It's also pretty much in the same form in the book. Apologies in advance for the length of the quote. but it's great. So, murder. Murder is the most conclusive and final of all crimes, as it can never be reconciled, and therefore murder is the only valid topic for a detective case. A policeman must wait for the criminals to do their crime, and then solve them. And such investigation is completely void of romanticism. You always talk of psychology and intuition and who knows what, and boast with pleasure with your university studies. I am merely this old, simple policeman, but I do know that imagination can't have anything to do with the police work in order to solve a case in a proper manner. You only need to collect the facts, set them in their correct context, and draw the conclusion. That is all. But one needs to be careful, and hence you need to rewrite this transcript. There you go. Some doodling hobbies for you. Did you find any sexist attributes in this cellulose?
Well, given what happens in the film, it's impossible not to find any sexist attributes.
The biggest one that caught my eye was when Palmu flatly ignored the maid's views of the incident. It was pretty terrible to watch. He just said that something along the lines that, let me guess, you have not seen anything, you don't know anything, and you are really terrified of the events. But in a way that is slightly, maybe, kind of balanced in the sense that he then immediately walks into the cleaning closet. It's kind of a decent revenge, but
I never read that one as a sexist stance from Palmu's side.
I just didn't understand why he didn't interview this person at all. She's only in one scene and then completely gone. Why?
Because at that point, Palmu was already completely frustrated on how the investigation was going and how everybody basically was giving Palmu the exact same spiel. How they did not see anything and they did not hear anything and they are all completely terrified. Even though Palmu himself already knows that something's off. And Palmu himself has witnessed, I would even say, illegal behavior from the attendees inside the manor. When the engineer Vaara downright threatens the butler in front of Palmu's eyes.
Yep.
Or the scene where Amalia Ryksek ends up congratulating the engineer Vaara when Vaara admits that he came into the house to actually physically harm. And when Vaara admits that he came into the manor to physically assault Bruno. And Palmu witnesses this one also. Why Palmu does not intervene with these interactions and why he lets the situation play out, I'm not completely sure on that. But everyone inside the manor has already made it perfectly clear that they are not playing along and they are holding secrets, and Palmu is at that point still unable to kind of get inside the situation, to find an angle how he can break inside the circle of silence that all these characters have formed between them. And yeah, I can believe that Palmu is completely frustrated with the situation at that point, and him just being a dick to the maid, it's just him ventilating out his frustration, and the gender of the maid actually does not play a part. The maid could have been a man or a female, and he or she still would have received some shit from Palmu.
But then again, he has appropriately had an interview with everybody else except the maid, and that never happens.
And that is an error of a police work. I admit that much.
Maybe the maid would have had a different kind of interpretation, different answer to what Palmu said. But she just says that, how did Mr. Inspector know this?
Yep. And to me that reads like Palmu being absolutely right in his stance that the maid also does not know, or at least would not admit knowing anything about anything.
Henrik, my dear co-host, do you have any quotes from this movie?
Oh, well, naturally, I mean, this is once again quite quotable movie. The monologue that you gave from Palmu is definitely one of them. I would say one of the highlights of the film, dialogue-wise. If I would not go into that kind of a length and simply pick up a simple quotes. Palmu yelling, selin joka sorkka.
Yeah, it's on my list
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, he himself alone goes through all the duties in the Red Book. And another great but extremely problematic and even racist quote from Palmu coming in this film. And I would say this one is actually being quote-wise, or as a sentence, this is actually being knowingly harmful. When Palmu yells to the crime scene investigator crew when they are first time arriving at the manor, älkää melutko kuin mustalaiset.
That's that.
Yeah, don't make a ruckus like gypsies.
Yeah.
Like that was, even after, defending Pekka and Patcast Negroes as being a film of its time and not knowing how harmful, how racist the film is and not being intentionally harmful. Even after all that, I would say this one quote definitely jumped into my ears when I heard it. And in this case, I cannot give as much leeway.
And to translate your salin joka sorkka, it would be something like
Turn your backs, every hoof.
every hoof or claw.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get the idea. Then when, I believe for the second time, Mr. Palmu tells to everyone in the house to stay in the same room this time. Not only to leave the complete building, but to stay in the exact room that they are now in, the parlor. And then Amalia Ryksek shouts after that. It's kind of faintly heard, but you can hear it. She says, "Hävytön mies." And then there is Mr. Rykämö who says, "Toi on pöpiäijä kyllä." And yeah, I'm not gonna translate those.
Yeah, the problem with great Finnish quotes is that none of them actually translates that well into any other language.
Yeah, to be, I mean, you probably hear this if you're a traveler of any kind. You will hear this like every fucking weekend. That everybody says that, oh, my language is so special that I can't really translate that. That doesn't translate that well. But I'm being serious here. I don't know how to translate this. I really don't know. And we like to conjugate the words in absurd ways, even if the conjugation doesn't make any sense in official way of the language. We still can understand what the other people is insinuating, and it's kind of amazing. You don't see that in many languages. Maybe in languages as crazy as Finnish, like Hungarian, which is related to Finnish. In Hungarian, I believe there's like 14 different ways to conjugate a word. Don't even ask me how many ways there's to conjugate a word in Finnish. But yeah, we're one of the most fucked up languages in the entire world. So just please don't ask me how to translate that. Please. Well, just a special notice to TJ Särkkä, the producer. He was the CEO of SF Films for, I think, most of its time. He also was a director, produced 233 films, directed 49 feature films, and he announced the SF bankruptcy. The film locations of this movie, I believe is the studio of SF in Kulosaari and at the center of Helsinki. That's all I can get out of this movie. Lighting, I like it. The movie starts with candlelight, basically, with Butler with his candles. It's very horror-esque. I think this movie is ahead of its time, if you look at it. I think the cuts are really fast-paced for its time. It's kind of like the James Bond of Finland before the James Bond. Because the first James Bond was, as a film version, it was made in 1962. This is made in 1960.
Oh boy, Karri! Like,
What?
If you wanna talk about James Bond of Finland, there's only one movie you can go to.
And don't talk about Vares.
No, definitely not Vares. Vares is the unfortunate attempt of being the Humphrey Bogart of Finland. But no, what I'm talking about is the undying classic from the 80s, Visa Mäkinen's Triple O and the Curse of Death.
What's that?
It's Agentti 000 ja Kuoleman kurvit. A film that was solely made simply because goddamn...
It's like a parody of 007, right?
It is a parody of 007, which was done simply because Visa Mäkinen managed to get his hands on Roger Moore's stunt double for extremely small amount of time. Immediately jumped into the opportunity to make a Finnish James Bond film. Absolutely unwatchable. Like, you can't go through that shit with a sane mind. I mean, it goes as bad that the movie itself, Agent 000 and the Curse of Death, it's a parody of a James Bond parody. Like that was the fucking selling argument of the film when it was being made. It was meant to be a parody of the 67 version of Casino Royale.
I thought that would be something like, this film is edited by Elmer Lahti. I suppose I can't really blame Elmer Lahti, but of course, because we have the same copy of this movie, as it happens, there are some weird cuts in this movie. But I think it's simply because of the version that they have of the original film. It's just so old that some part of the movie has corrupted in a way that there's a lot of frame skipping in this film. Sometimes you even see some skipped dialogue. You're not sure what these characters are saying. For example, the engineer Vaara first time meets Mr. Palmu, and you're not even sure if Engineer Vaara says anything to Mr. Palmu because the film clips at that exact moment, and also when Mr. Palmu is about to go to sauna and explains that to his detective colleague Mr. Toivo. I don't think it's an editing mistake. It could be an editing mistake, but I have to be really soft here. The editing tools that they had at their hand on those days, ridiculous. So I'm gonna just give a pass for this one.
There are some notable editing, I don't know, can I say mistakes? Especially counting in the tools they had in their possession at the time. But there are visible jump cuts, editing-wise, in this movie where, for example, a character starts walking, for example, from a door into a room and then mysteriously teleports mid-walk. And these you face more and more these jump cuts towards the end of the film. They are almost completely absent pretty much for the first half of the film, but after the 1 hour and 17 minute mark, that's when I started to finally notice them, and they came more frequent and more intense as the movie went on from that point onwards.
Unfortunately, the insanely popular and amazing podcast called The Flick Lab was not able to get their hands on the Blu-ray edition released on 2016 of this movie, which could be a better print of this film, I have no idea, but I'm going by the DVD version of this film as is Henrik, which means that we do have these so-called jump cuts here. I'm interested if they have corrected this in 2016 re-release of Blu-ray.
I would almost make a guess that the problems are so integral with the actual film reels and the original film that was composed that they could not have fixed those jump cuts for the Blu-ray release.
And I would agree with you, with not knowing anything factual about the Blu-ray release. But
but looking at the film at hand, I would say that you cannot fix those today when composing the Blu-ray, unless you manage to somehow find some, I don't know, a buried vault where would be few meters extra film reel, from the original shoot of the movie.
Would you say that this is a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy edition?
Most definitely.
Yeah, it likely is. But it could be that the original film reel of the film has dilapidated in the sense that it has a lot of noise in the image that is hard to deal with. But I would love to see the Blu-ray to compare what they can do. I mean, if you're going to release a fucking Blu-ray, then you have to go to the original source. If you don't, then just kill yourselves. No point for Blu-ray.
Yeah, then again, the first films you got out when the DVD came out as a technology. The first DVD films were once again re-releases of the old silent films, and the same went with the Blu-ray. When Blu-ray first hit the market, the first films that I found as Blu-rays were once again old black and white movies and some silent films. So I guess that when it comes to Blu-ray, nobody is paying that much attention to the conversion process as you demand.
Yeah, sorry, I am the absolute quality freak of the podcast, I believe. Henrik may know the most amount of films in the world available, but I may know when to demand quality of my Blu-rays.
Once again, your introduction into this movie and Indiana Jones, as you admitted yourself, happened through VHS, God-chosen format movies. But another kind of a oddity that I noticed, now that we are nitpicking every technical aspect here on this podcast, is at times the actors themselves actually mispronounce things. To give you a couple of examples is, for example, the first time they meet the writer, K.V. Laihonen. Laihonen uses the old saying, Espanjalinna, the castle in Spain.
I have never heard that before this movie, honestly.
And neither have I, but, I'm willing to go with the characters here.
Yeah.
Who vouch for it actually being a well-known saying. And Palmu instead says Espanjalinna, the line in Spain. And goddamn, his sidekick Virta actually confirms the Espanjalinna, which was something that I was quite left scratching my head. Or later on in the movie, this is once again some of the longer dialogue scenes where Palmu is talking about Irma Vanne, and by accident names her Irma Ranne.
Really?
Yeah, that happens. And those were the moments where I was surprised that no one had noticed those when making the film. So There are genuine mistakes here on the celluloid, is my point.
Definitely is, and there's a moment where Lady Ryksek says some line with her close-up shot. And in the background you see Mrs. Rykämä. And Mrs. Rykämä does spell out some line, but it is inaudible completely.
And you get a reverse of this fucking problem at the very end of the film, when they finally arrest Amalia Ryksek, and Amalia is protesting her arrest as they are walking her upstairs from the basement. This happened immediately after the final showdown.
Right.
And in the audio, you can hear Amalia yelling her protest. But when you look at the film, you actually notice that nobody's speaking. So So that happened.
Well, you wanna get technical with the audio landscape here. You wanna know how fucking much this audio hardware. Do you know how fucking much the audio hardware weighed during this movie with the Aga Baltic system?
I have no idea how I have no idea. I also don't know in any way how big and how much space the audio equipment took, but knowing the size of the age-old computers, I could guess that the audio equipment took like 2 fucking storerooms worth of space.
Well, looking at the pictures that I have at my hand, it looks like the audio was recorded entirely separately on separate reels, which had to be manually timed with the picture that they had in separate reels again. And this audio equipment, the control equipment in itself, weighs 93 kilograms. Then there is AC power supply that weighs fucking 53 kilograms. Then there is the batteries. If you don't have AC, then you will have 20 kilograms more. And then there is the recorder equipment itself. It's 80 kilograms. And I mean, if you count all of these together, it amounts to something like at least like 300 kilograms. You need like a separate fucking crew to move this audio system around.
That's complete madness already.
Yeah, I mean, I applaud the people of this time. Good God.
It's hard to even imagine that kind of effort and recording equipment of that size, considering that these days, I can have a voice recorder on my fucking cell phone.
Mm-hmm. Which is better than this?
Yeah, which is better than this one.
Miles. Okay. Insanely better. Whew. But hey, wouldn't it be actually fascinating to do a modern movie with this shit old technology to get that kind of a old Komisario Palmu vibe back? Should we do this movie, Henrik?
I think we most definitely should do this one, and I think we should remake the film without any money, so that it would even look as cheap as possible.
Okay, you will be Komisario Palmu.
I can be Komisario Palmu. Will you be Amalia Ryyksäck?
You know, well, I love to be different voices, so I can give it a try.
Yeah, but since you mentioned it, I of course could recommend Francis Ford Coppola's version of Dracula, as that is a film where it was shot on 92, and they used, at least to my knowledge, entirely and only the old school camera tricks in the effects and physical effects. And there is a moment in the film where they even rebuilt the age-old black and white movie camera, and they shot a few frames worth of material with that and inserted that into one of the scene transitions in the movie.
Uh-huh.
So there you see, well, it was made in, like I said, 92, but there still is that theme of using age-old equipment in a modern film and combining those two together. And the film Shadow of the Vampire also does the same trick. In that case, the film crew borrowed the original film camera used by Murnau in his filming of Nosferatu back in the Silent Day era, and they had the exact same camera on the film. And to my knowledge, they did shoot some footage with that camera, or at least realistic replica of that camera, depending on did they get the right to use the actual camera. And they combined those shots also with the film. So if you wanna, a couple of examples where there is that old school technology used in a modern movie, I would recommend that you check those two films out.
it would be kind of hilarious to, in this podcast, to go see the Lumiere train and just talk about the Lumiere train, the few seconds. I guess it's more of a documentary for like 3 hours to talk about that.
Yeah, that would be definitely a challenge.
The music of this movie, any special notes? It's made by Osmo Lindemann. He was also a music teacher, known as a pioneer of electronic music, which he didn't get to study for too long before he died. But yeah, and he studied in Sibelius Academy in Helsinki and in Munich also. He got into electronic music in Warsaw and Illinois and Columbia. Won the first prize of International Society for Contemporary Music, blah blah blah, or in short ISCM in 1972 with a song called Ritual, which I have not heard, but I have heard his Spectacle, which is an electronic track, which I didn't really care about. It's just basically, in my opinion, to showcase what you can do with electronic sounds of that time. It's not really a song. It's just 10 minutes of random noises for me. Sorry, Osmo Lindemann, but I mean, yeah, it's nothing else than just showing what you can do with electronic sounds in 1974. Anyway, he won that prize, and Osmo Lindemann was interested especially in computer music. He was an avant-garde composer, studied with Carl Orff. Lindemann wrote also 2 symphonies and 2 piano concertos and a shitload of other stuff. He won the Jussi Prize for year's best film score in 1959 and 1962. I believe other one of those, well, it must have been the second Komisario Palmu movie, or otherwise I'm completely insane. There's also a song that features in this film, which is performed by Detective Kokki. Silmät tummat kuin yö. If I get my math right here, it's originally written by, I think, well, it's written by Usko Kemppi, but in this movie it's performed by Kokki or Leo Jokela. So there. Film aspect. Film aspect ratio is 1.66 to 1. Film length is 3 kilometers. The movie was released in 9th of September 1960. Do you like football?
No, not at all.
Me neither. What's your favorite scene of this film?
In the end, my favorite pick for a favorite scene would be the moment when Palmu is actually yelling to his 2 aides. Or his sidekicks. Or whatever Virta and Kokki are to Palmu. The 2 doofuses. It's a funny scene, but at the same time, it kind of does a good job in showcasing one of the running themes in this movie, which is the ones who are upper level of the social hierarchy always give shit to the ones on the, you know, who are below them. The CEO of the company goes in and gives shit about Palmu to Palmu's superiors, or in this case it goes so that it first goes to the police chief, who gives shit to Palmu's boss, who then yells at Palmu and orders the investigation to be ceased, and finally Palmu yells at the doofuses simply for the simple reason just to yell at them, as he admits at that moment.
Maybe I most like the moment when Detective Kokki says to Komisario Palmu that why does Mr. Palmu want to bathe? And he just shrugs it off. Other great moment is when again Detective Kokki is drawing his example to Detective Toivo on how the events might have happened. Like there could have been a murderer X and then there could have been a murderer Y, and maybe both of the X and the Y could have been not interested in the target Bruno Ryksek, but maybe they were expecting to strike at target Z. But both of them they were unable to get to the target Z. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I can give you the entire formula of this case. See.
Henrik, do you like Finland?
I would say I have a love and hate relationship with Finland.
What do you love?
Not so much love and hate. Yeah, I like Finland. I would say I even love Finland, but part of loving something is also seeing the mistakes and also seeing the faults in what you love. So while yeah, I love Finland, but I'm also at times extremely critical of Finland and feel that Finland could do better.
At least in Finland you have this. In Finland things are relatively well still when you compare it to other nations in Europe right now.
I can't really make a call on that one.
Henrik, will you be beaten up by nationalist scum in the streets of Rovaniemi on Independence Day?
Well, the possibility is always there, especially in my case, seeing how charming and well-likable person I am.
Well, aren't you?
You may wanna get a second opinion on that one.
Well, what's your favorite performance of Komisario Palmun erehdys?
The obvious answer, of course, which comes to no surprise, I guess, to absolutely anyone, is Joel Rinne, who has been much hyped throughout this episode. That being said, I am astonished how great performances this movie has altogether. Like, there is no single bad performance in this movie.
So you don't completely despise me for choosing this movie instead of Unknown Soldier?
Well, of course I completely despise you for, not choosing the Unknown Soldier. But that being said, it's just, complete heresy from your part, since some things are absolutely holy and should never be messed with. But, that not counting in... Yeah, this movie is filled with great performances. And I would say they all make equally great work here. And everybody should be given the first place as a best performer. But, if I have to choose, as we have to in this podcast, yeah, in that case, it's Joel Rinne. The man's still the iconic face of Palmu. And for good reason.
Indeed, it is Joel Rinne. Hands down and hands up. Thank you, Joel Rinne. Rest in peace. Thank you for your services for Finnish cinema. Henrik, do you like ice cream?
Yeah, doesn't everybody?
Yeah, it's just the point where I'm just trying to artificially elongate this podcast. So, thank you for joining us. And would you recommend Komisario Palmun erehdys?
I would definitely recommend The Error of Inspector Palmu. In fact, I would recommend the entire 4-part series, even in counting Vodka Komisario Palmu. Way better film that everybody gives credit for.
So you would say you were not ashamed to watch this particular Finnish film for this particular Finnish episode?
I can admit I'm not ashamed that I watched Komisario Palmun erehdys. I am ashamed the fact that we did not watch The Unknown Soldier instead of this film.
God damn it. So we will cover it later.
And we never come back to The Unknown Soldier ever again. We will edit this podcast and this will be the only Finnish film we've ever covered.
God damn it.
Here on this podcast.
Is this a challenge? We will do it. We'll do all of them.
Yeah, week by week, the entire franchise, because that worked so goddamn well the last time.
Yeah, we have like tenfold more social media interest when we have removed ourselves from the Halloween franchise.
Yeah.
But, dear sheeples, I would recommend Komisario Palmun erehdys. It is a great detective story. It has a lot of meat around the bones. It never gets boring. it has so much material around its bones, in fact, that it's really hard to kind of get the full picture on the first go. But if you really concentrate on it, you will notice that all the puzzles will fit this particular puzzle. So if you get a chance to watch it, that's great. If you don't speak Finnish, you're screwed. But if you want to see it with Finnish subtitles, please contact me at theflicklab@pm.me. Henrik, do you like ice hockey?
No, fucking hate ice hockey. And any other sport that you try to come up with at this point of the episode.
Thank you for joining us. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you have available for you. If you are finding the Flick Lab name, then you are right on the money. And next week, if nothing changes, if Henrik will not self-destruct this episode, it will be White Hunter, Black Heart from Clint Eastwood, because Clint Eastwood is going to be very current with his new film that is going to hit the cinemas next year. Henrik, do you like albinos?
God damn it!
This has been the Flick Lab. Thank you for joining us, and see you next week.
Yeah, see ya!
And Airi Rykämö Bruno Ryksek could have had suicidals. The lady Krusek.
Ryksek.
I just got some French fries in the restaurant, so.